After one has gained a lot of experience in meditation, one loses interest in words. So I have very few words to offer you, but hopefully they'll be helpful. Meditation is simply abiding in the self, as the self, in the core of one's being. And it turns out that that's harder than it seems. Harder than it seems that it should be. And we have to understand why that is. And through all the spiritual traditions, 3 different levels of consciousness have been maintained as being the jurisdiction, the 3 phases, you could say, of consciousness, or dimensions of consciousness in which we must go through. There's the level of the absolute, the Atman, the level of the soul, and then that of the ego. And at each level, as we move away from the Atman, from the absolute, we lose a certain amount of coherence. And by the time we get to the ego, we are fragmented. The ego is made up of all of these little semiotic fragments. By that I mean fragments made up of words and images that congeal into complexes, narratives, little world views of scenarios that must unfold. But you never know which little fragment, little egon, like a neutron, the equivalent of a subatomic particle. You know, they've discovered now, they too are in swarms. You don't know where a neutron is. It could be anywhere within a certain cloud of possibility. And all that it is really is a certain wave of probability. There's a certain percentage of probability it could be here, or that it could be here or here at any given moment. We don't know. It's uncertain. And I would say that this principle of uncertainty is the primary principle that is operating in our moment of history. Unlike in the past when people were resonating more at the level of the Atman, there was a very different kind of culture, a very different kind of field of experience created when we were in Atman consciousness. And then when we were in soul consciousness, it was a different kind of world. And now we are almost entirely, all of us, in ego consciousness, because the collective unconscious of the noosphere is in that state and becoming more and more fragmented. And we all witness this. And the result of this fragmentation and uncertainty, which amounts to an uncertainty of knowing who I will be in any given moment. You don't know if in the next interaction with someone you'll end up being sweet or being angry. You can't judge it in advance because you yourself don't know which fragment's going to come into play. And so not only are we uncertain about other people, but we're even more uncertain about who we are and what is going to manifest from within us. Will we be taken over by some obsessive drive, fear, anxiety, neediness? We don't know, because all of those fragments are there and each of them has a potential to emerge at any given time. And we can be taken over by it. Does anyone have that experience? And so as long as we're in ego consciousness, we don't have that certainty as to who we are or what the world is all about. But it's unbearable to live in a world where you don't know what the significance of anything is. And yet at every moment and every day, the uncertainty is increasing. Because it's being potentiated, summated by the uncertainty within each individual, or I should probably say dividual, not individual, because everyone is divided into all of these fragmented possibilities. And so if we move back from the ego into the soul, there's much more stability. And there's a different kind of logic and a different kind of love, a different kind of intelligence that operates at the soul level than at the ego level. and even yet a different one at the level of spirit or Atman. I think I use the analogy sometimes of a cake, and the Atman is an uncut cake, whereas the soul is a cake that's still whole, but it's been cut into slices, but it's all there. And then when you get to the ego level, there's only one slice left, and it's your slice, and you're going to hold on to it. And then it gets concretized. Now it's no longer consciousness, it's just matter, and I've got to possess it. And I've got to get a bigger slice because that person's got a bigger one than mine, and all of this. And then life becomes a war rather than a whole, as the cake was originally, in which we are not only able to enjoy it, we can have our cake and eat it, but because we are the cake. At the spirit level, we are the cake. The universe, God, we are all that. At the soul level, well, okay, I have my slice, you have yours, they're all equal, we're brothers, we're sisters, under God who provided the cake. And then again, there's peace on earth at the soul level. We are not yet at that ultimate level of bliss, but we are at the level of fairness. But at the ego level, no, nothing is fair, and if it is, that's unfair, because I deserve a bigger piece. That's how the ego's logic goes. And in Christianity, this was seen as 3 levels of love, which were called agape, philia, and eros. Agape, godly love, divine love, operates at the spirit level. It's love of all that is because it recognizes that all that is you, yourself, no one else. We are all one. What's not to love? That's all it is. And it's consciousness, and it's miracle. At the soul level, there is still love, philia, brotherhood, right? Philadelphia in the U.S., the city of brotherly love. St. Francis is a beautiful example of that sense of brotherhood with all beings. Still very beautiful, somewhat removed from the ultimate grace, but within the realm of the possibility of grace. And through prayer and through good deeds and through surrender to God, the grace is realized. But at the ego level, we are in eclipse of that. We're too divided in ourselves to experience our own center. We're too uncertain of who we are or what the world is, and so there's anxiety because there's incoherence in our own being. So in meditation, we're bringing all of those shards together. In Kabbalah, this is called the world of the klipot, the shards, the fragments. And we have to bring them together, back into unity. And the reason we have to do this is that our world will not work if we are in a state of internal uncertainty. Our world will fail us, and we will fail ourselves, and we will fail to create a world in which everyone serves each other, and therefore a successful cake can be baked, right? But someone left this cake out in the rain, and it'll never be baked again. There used to be a song about that. You can't bake the cake because you're too fragmented. We don't have the recipe to put it together again. This is the problem we have. And this has been better described actually by the great creative writers of the modern age than by the spiritual teachers. Because the spiritual teachers mostly have been handing on a tradition that goes back to a time when we weren't so fragmented. And so you can look in the Buddhist texts or the Christian texts and you won't find much about the unconscious mind and its chaos and its fantasies and all of that. Very little, because at the time when Jesus was teaching, or Buddha and all of that, the world was still at that soul level of philia, and agape was real. People weren't trapped in eros, which is desire. It's not even love. And you understand, because I'm sure you've all been there, that as soon as you get what you thought you desired, you realize that wasn't it. Whether it's a spouse or a job or a beach house or whatever, it always turns out, it was the house across the street I really wanted, and it was that job that they've got and that wife and that whatever, right? The soul's desire can never attain satisfaction.